WRAP call center here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And for those of you who don't know me, like I said, my name is Teddy Jernigan. I've been working on cars in one form or another since I was about 14 years old. So that's for the last about 25 years. I've been ASC certified L1 for the last 15 years. And if you can break it on a car, I've broken it at this point. So I started programming on cars really before programming was a thing, very early on when there really wasn't any help to be had. So a lot of the stuff I had to figure out on my own, and then just, talking to other techs and figuring out problems that they've had and just kind of troubleshooting and figuring things out from there. And now we're at a point where there's a lot of good products and a lot of good support out there. And hopefully I can shed some light on some of the things that I've run into, and you guys won't have the kind of problems that I had when I was coming up into this thing. So let's get this thing started. So we're going to talk about the keys to successful vehicle programming today. All right, so what I'm going to be talking about in this webinar basically is a lot of the common misconceptions about module programming. So how to determine if programming is needed, the importance of diagnostics prior to programming, how to properly prepare yourself and the vehicle for programming, and then of course what to do after programming. I'm sure everybody's ran into a situation or heard a horror story about how programming caused a problem or didn't fix what they were trying to fix. So all right, so programming is not a substitute for diagnostics. So this is one of the biggest problems that I see in the diagnostic world today, is a lot of technicians are quick to blame programming in lieu of proper diagnostics. And then other technicians will think, and I'm not sure where this misconception comes from, but they think that the module should be updated before they do their diagnostic process. And that's just not the case. So no matter what you're doing, no matter what diagnostic trouble tree you're going through or what you're trying to figure out, programming is never going to be step one. It might be step 2 or 3, but it's never going to be step 1. That's brings me to the next point. So programming, it's just another part of the diagnostic and repair process. Programming really should be thought of as a replacement part, not the fix. You know what I mean? So it's just like doing a set of brake pads. You go in, you don't just throw brake pads on it without doing the diagnostic first. Yeah, it might need that, but you still got to do the diagnostic process. It's not instead of the diagnostics, it's part of the process. I mean, these are the 6 simple steps that I was taught, pretty early on by the guys that I apprenticed under to go through for really any, repair process or diagnostics process to go through. I mean, you verify the customer's complaint, determine any symptoms that are in the vehicle and figure out what's related to the complaint and what's not, analyze those symptoms, isolate the issue, process of elimination, correct the issue, and then confirm the fix is done. This is a big one that we run into, and I've seen a lot, especially from other shops and people that call into the call center. Programming for programming's sake, it's going to cost you money. It may not cost you money this time, but it's going to cost you money eventually. I got a little case study here that I'm going to tell you about. This was a call that I got a few years ago. So customer called in. They called us to program a powertrain control module and a body control module in a 2012 GMC Terrain. So I always make it a big point with any of my customers to get the background of the vehicle, what they're trying to fix or why they replaced the parts to begin with. So the background for this particular vehicle was the vehicle came in with an airbag light on. And this particular shop had just gotten their first pass-through device, and this was their first attempt at programming. So instead of actually diagnosing the issue, they went in and just started to try to program. They attempted to program the body control module first, and of course it failed. So instead of stopping there, they attempted to program the powertrain control module as well, and that also failed. So went through a little bit of diagnostics with the customer, and I had him put the original body control module back in because they were trying to replace it. And then I had him do a global reset. Then we called him back, went in, verified that there was a intermittent communications problem with the BCM. And so went through, they ended up finding a broken wire underneath the dash going from the airbag module to the body control module. And then once we did the hard reset and fixed the wire, we were able to program the BCM properly. And really all we had to do was update it at that point. And then the broken wire really was the problem the whole time. They didn't actually need programming. This is a perfect example of programming instead of diagnostics is wrong. It's always going to be wrong. And if you're going to go in and just start programming things, eventually you're going to have a problem where you're going to cause a bigger issue than you had to begin with. Another point, always have a reason for programming. Right back to the same thing. So just like the situation we talked about, always have that reason. You know what I mean? And that brings me to my next point. Find the TSB. If you're going to do a programming, find the TSB, because pretty much every manufacturer out there is going to release some sort of a bulletin or TSB about software updates. And it's going to explain the symptoms that the software update fixes and explain the diagnostic process, or if there's something else that needs to be done as well with this update. Service information is your friend, and I cannot stress this enough. A lot of people, a lot of technicians are just, they go in and they think they know what's going on, and they haven't followed the proper service information, even for preparing the vehicle or the repair process, and then they end up with a problem. Always check your OE service information to make sure you have everything set up correctly before you program. And there may be some funny steps that have to take place in order to get the, prepare for programming or to diagnose. How to prepare for programming. Again, service information is your friend. This is a reoccurring theme with me. Always make sure you're checking that OE service information. I understand that, especially with a lot of us, we're working on late model cars and the service information may not be 100% complete, but you still got to check it. And if you run into a situation where your service info isn't complete, reach out to your peers, get on your forums, get on Diagnet, go in there and, check stuff out. Somebody else probably ran into the situation you ran into. But always make sure you're going through the proper steps. I mean, a perfect example of that, and we get a lot of calls for this kind of thing, is the 2001 to 2007 Trailblazer platforms. I'm sure a lot of people out there have gone in, tried to program a PCM, or they did a replacement PCM and they end up with a failure. There's a special process on those vehicles where you actually have to dismantle the A-pillar and jump a splice pack to isolate the modules for proper programming. And if you don't check the service information, you're not going to know that. And there are a lot of other vehicles out there. There may be a special adapter needed. There may be special voltage, or it could be other things. So always make sure you're checking your service information, make sure you're following the process, and get it complete, get it done right the first time. This is something that you guys are going to see every once in a while, especially if you're working on Euro vehicles. The service information is going to say electrical load equals 0. What exactly does that mean? So electrical load equals 0 is that. I mean, think about it. Anything that could cause an electrical load on the vehicle needs to be disconnected or turned off. If it's a factory accessory, make sure you go in there and you turn off your radio, turn off your HVAC, that kind of thing. A lot of thing that people don't realize when they're going through programming is cooling and condenser fans will kick on typically during programming. And if you don't have a battery maintainer that can keep up with that kind of voltage load, you're going to end up with a failed flash, because most of your fans are going to be pulling about 90 amps. And if you got 2 of them, that's going to kill that battery in a couple of minutes. So you need to make sure you go in there, check under the hood. And if they can't be turned off, unplug them. Just go ahead and unplug them. It's better safe than sorry. Disconnect non-factory accessories. So what exactly is a non-factory accessory? Well, it's just that anything that this vehicle wasn't born with. The most common thing we see is aftermarket radios and alarms. And especially if a lot of us, like me, are working on fleet vehicles, check for a GPS unit. There could be a GPS unit under that dash. And a lot of GPS units just jump right off of the ALDL. So you may look at the dash and it may look normal, but go ahead and stick your head up underneath that dash and see if it's jumped. Make sure you go through and make sure you know what you're working on, and make sure you understand all of this non-factory stuff, because these non-factory accessories, they don't talk the same language as all the factory modules. For most programming processes, once you start programming, the first signal that's sent out by the OE application is a sleep signal to everything we're not touching. These non-factory stuff doesn't understand those signals, and they're still going to be alive. And a lot of the aftermarket radio installers really like to use that CAN bus as their reference voltage. You got to go in there, you got to make sure. And that brings me to another point, a really good point to check for. If you got an aftermarket radio in a GM, there's a good chance there's a chime module plugged in somewhere in there, and you're going to have to find it, and you're going to have to disconnect it before you start programming. Equipment. What kind of equipment are you going to need to get programming? So this is pretty simple. You're going to need a pass-through. You're going to need a laptop. You're going to need a battery maintainer, and you're going to need a subscription to the OE websites. This stuff is pretty simple. If you get on NASTIF, they're going to give you a list of OE links you can go to download your software. Get a pass-through such as a Cardec Plus 2, get a battery maintainer. And then another thing a lot of people overlook is your internet connection. So I highly recommend having a hardwire internet connection. Try not to program over Wi-Fi. It's going to cause you issues eventually. Like I said before, it may not be this time, but it will happen at some point. Anytime you're doing wireless stuff, there could be interference from a cell phone or a Bluetooth signal or something. It could cause a dropout. And then another thing, when you're using your laptop for programming, make sure you got that charger plugged into your laptop. You don't want to go through all these steps, proper diagnosis, get everything set up. Don't have your laptop plug in and the laptop battery die during programming. That's bad. It's a simple thing, very easy to overlook, but those minor details, those, attention to detail will save you in the long run. So there are a lot of alternatives out there to having your own equipment. There's things like the rep program, there's the DrivePro. If it's something where you can handle the diagnosis and you just don't want to spend the money to get your own pass-through and laptop, go ahead and give us a call over at Rep. We'll help you out with that. If it's somewhere you think you need a little more help, then we can hook you up with a DrivePro, that kind of thing. So here's another, I put this as a separate point because a lot of people don't understand the difference here. So battery maintainer, not battery charger. So a battery maintainer will supply a steady stream of clean voltage, and it will maintain that voltage constant throughout the process. Battery chargers don't do that. Battery chargers, in order to charge that battery quickly, tend to pulse voltage, and it's a dirty voltage. And here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize about a battery charger. If you were to go in and scope your CAN lines and you see a waveform of the CAN communication, it looks awfully similar to a pulsed voltage. And that can sometimes be misinterpreted as programming language and cause a flash failure. So you want to make sure that you have a good solid battery maintainer that has nice flat voltage in it the whole time. Keep that battery constant. Prepare your environment and your coworkers. This is a really big deal. I've run into this kind of issue a whole bunch, especially if you're doing flashes on late model vehicles or like Nissans or BMWs, that kind of thing, that it takes a very long time to flash. Most of your Nissan 5-speed transmissions could take you an hour and a half or so to flash if you're using NIRS. So you want to make sure that you don't have any extension cords or Ethernet cables draped across the walkway where they could get inadvertently unplugged. And you also want to go ahead and walk around and check with the guys in the bays working next to you and let them know that you're programming. Hey, I'm programming this car. Make sure nobody touches it or don't disconnect anything, just so they're aware. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand if they walk by a car and the key's on, they should leave it alone. They go in, they'll just turn that key off on you, and you were in washing your hands while you were programming a car, and the guy in the bay next to you thought he was being nice by turning the key off so the battery didn't die. Lo and behold, he just ruined the flash for you. So you want to make sure everybody around you knows what you're doing, knows that you're flashing a car, not to disturb things. And I missed a slide there, sorry. Okay, so what to do after programming. Once again, service information is your friend. There's a lot of modules out there that even when you're just doing a module update, there could be required setup. And especially on replacement modules, there's almost always going to be required setup. So the flash is not done until this setup is complete. Some of these setup functions may not be through the flash application. Some of them may be on the scan tool, or some of them might just be a drive cycle or manual functions that you have to do. There could be very specific drive cycle instructions or manual instructions to do. So make sure you're looking at that service information for after the flash. A lot of your newer Ford transmissions have a clutch learns that have to be done. That's not done through the flash application. You're going to have to hook up your scan tool. And then the same thing with the drive cycle for the transmission. So it relearns all its adaptations. They're very specific. You got to make sure you do it exactly. The biggest thing we run into is with ABS modules on Chrysler. There's a very specific set of instructions to go through for the drive cycle to make sure that ABS system proves out. And that ABS light will be on forever until that drive cycle is complete. It's really not hard, but if you don't follow it exactly as it's outlined in the service information, you're never going to get that repair done. Confirming the repair. That's the simplest thing to do after programming. You go through, you confirm everything's fixed, and hopefully this is the situation you run into where you flash the car, everything you thought would be fixed is fixed, and you can get that car out of your bay and you can collect some money. So what to do if programming doesn't fix your issue? This is a big thing that I run into multiple times a day. People have gone through, usually they will have found a TSB that is pretty close to their symptoms. So then they call us up and we do the programming, but their original issue is still there. That's the problem. That goes right back to the beginning of what I was talking about. The proper diagnostics have to be followed every single time before you do a programming. Even if that TSB is right on, that TSB will never just say to program. There will always be something else associated with it. When you follow the diagnostic process or in the TSB process, there is always some kind of confirmation and then the repair. So if you've gone through your process or you believe that you have, and then after programming is done and you've done your setup and you still have the same fault, you need to stop, step back from the vehicle and look at it like it's brand new coming into your bay because something was overlooked. Go through the process, follow your trouble tree, start over. Don't be afraid to start over. You know what I mean? Just make sure you're going through the process correctly. This minor, small little attention to details is always going to save you in the long run. I mean, there's always time to do it a second time, right? But we want to take the time now and do it right the very first time. And we want to instill that confidence in our customers and in ourselves that we know we fixed this car the first time. Here's another thing that at some point in your programming life, you are going to run into this. You're going to go through your process and you will have replaced the module, you've updated the module, you followed the setup, and now all of a sudden you have a problem that was not there before. It's terrifying because it throws you for a loop. It can be aggravating. It's difficult, especially if you know you did everything correctly. So the best thing to do in this case is to double check yourself. Don't be too confident and to think that you can't make a mistake, because everybody can make a mistake. Go back into that programming application, verify that that programming is correct for the vehicle. Because sometimes, especially if you're if you're doing GM programming, there could be a couple of different options for different specific issues, depending on the flash. And some of those you have to read very carefully. There will be, they use some weird terminology sometimes, like less a particular RPO, or it'll say minus, but it won't say minus. It'll just be a tiny little minus sign, so you can't really see it. So you got to really make sure you pay attention to what you were doing in that process, because you could inadvertently cause an issue just by going a little too quick in your process. So go through, verify your programming, and if that's all good, stop. Just double check through your whole diagnostic process. I understand, depending on what you're doing, that could take some time. You could spend another hour or two on this vehicle just verifying, but you don't want to just automatically assume that the module that you replaced or that the programming you did is bad, because it may not be. A lot of times it's not. I mean, let's be realistic here. Programming, it's not a magic wand. You know what I mean? It's just another replacement part. This is, it's fairly simple, but a lot of people are really scared of it. And don't be scared of it. Just think, like I said before, think of it like a brake pad. Programming is a replacement part. Sometimes that replacement part can be bad right out of the box. New doesn't mean good. New means untested, right? So even if we're going in and programming, you know, it could be, so we're going to double check ourselves. We're going to verify our diagnostic process. And if all that's good, you know, obviously we got a bad part and we're going to go ahead and replace that part. So like I said, let me go over a couple other things here. Went pretty quick there. So like I said, don't be scared of programming. Programming really isn't hard. There's nothing hard about programming. Everybody's heard a horror story about programming, about how they caused a whole bunch of issues, or they had to send a car, you know, out of their shop to get it fixed, or they had to call in a mobile tech or something like that. And it's really not difficult. None of it is. Follow your service information, verify that you have everything set up correctly, and then go for it. And if it's not something you're comfortable with, give us a call over at Opus IVS and we can give you a hand with that. But most importantly, follow your diagnostic process. Programming is not a magic wand. It's not going to fix everything. And make sure you're getting everything set up properly and be confident in what you're doing. And don't be scared. Do not be scared of programming. And like I said, if it can be broke, I have broken it and I've figured out how to fix most of this stuff. So, I mean, in a lot of cases, even if you do have a failed programming event, the modules aren't automatically, you know, bricked at that point. Most OEs can be recovered with the module, so don't be afraid of it. I mean, there are steps to take, and there's people out there. The information is out there on how to recover most things. Now, not everything, but like I said, most things. I mean, it happens. People don't have things set up correctly, and then you end up with a flash failure. But I mean, as long as stuff is still responsive, even if you can't quite get stuff going, there's a way to fix it. Get out there, get on your forums, talk to your peers, give us a call at Opus IVS. We can give you a hand with that. All right, so that actually went pretty quick. So I guess we can go through. I talked a little faster than I thought. So we can go through and we can open this up for some questions.
Right, guys, ask your questions if you have any in the chat.
Go ahead and shoot, guys. Even if you want to get specific with stuff, like I said, I've been programming cars for a very long time. I can lend you some insight.
All right. Juan Reyes, can you do key programming?
Can we do key programming? I mean, yeah, that's a pretty general question. In general, yes. It really depends on what exactly you want done. I mean, every OE is different. That's the thing to remember. And so here's a little bit of insight. You know, if you haven't been doing programming before, so the programming that's in a vehicle is the property of the OE. So we are slaves to what the OE allows us to do. So there's a lot of them that are good. They want us to be able to do pretty much whatever the dealer can do. You know, GM, Toyota, those they give us free reign. There's some other ones that kind of tighten it up a little bit, but in general, yes. But there's also a couple other things to think about. So if you're in the market for doing keys, a lot of the times it's probably something to look into to get your locksmith license, because there are, especially newer vehicles are going to require locksmith licensing in your shop. Even if you're using a remote programmer like Wrap or Drive, you're still going to need a licensed VSP in your shop in order to get everything authorized to be able to get those keys programmed. Now, some aren't like that, but again, if you check in your service information, the majority of the OEs will tell you if there's some kind of coded access that needs a locksmith license or not. Anything that does not need a locksmith license, we can give you a hand, no problem. Anything that does, we can still help with that, assuming you get your locksmith license as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right. Let's see here. Michael Enslow is asking, can you reprogram a used module?
Used modules are a little bit of a difficult subject. So there's, again, every OE is a little bit different. So I'm going to tell you right now, Ford and GM are good with playing ball for used modules until you get into what they call the global A platform for GM. Then it gets a little tricky, although those global A modules are also backwards compatible to the non-global modules. So a lot of the times we can. Now the other OEs like Chrysler, they don't allow it at all. And then when you get into the Euro brands, you can actually cause more damage to the vehicle by just plugging in a used module. If you're working on a BMW that has a CAS module, you plug a used module in, you turn the key on, you could inadvertently lock that CAS module up. And that's not a good thing, because then you're going to have to call in a mobile tech. You're going to have to call somebody, to get that vehicle unlocked, somebody with a locksmith. So used modules, yes, we can do them, but be sure you know what you're doing when you plug that used module in. Again, I mean, really think about a salvaged part. You know what I mean? A salvaged fender or control arm is not a big deal, but salvaged electrical components, that can be a little tricky. You don't know what was happening to that vehicle that it came out of. It could have been a flood vehicle, you know what I mean? Or that vehicle could be sitting out in the salvage yard with the hood off, raining for years and years and years. And now you got that module and you plug it into yours. It's something that I advise against doing used modules, but I understand that there can be cost issues or availability issues, especially with dealing with older vehicles. But so as far as, the wrap program goes, the only thing that we can do for used modules is Ford and GM. There's a little bit more, again, if you get your LSID, they unlock some functions on the drive side that we can do there. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. There's another question here. Let me see. Okay. So someone asks, do you find Volvo and Mercedes being the most challenging to work with?
Volvo and Mercedes. Actually, no, believe it or not, a lot of the Euros are pretty straightforward. You know what I mean? Volvo can be tricky. The software itself can be a little bit tricky just because they have some odd processes for setting things up. Mercedes is actually pretty straightforward, especially if you're the most common thing we do with Mercedes is the conductor plates for the 722-9. And that's actually very easy, especially if you have the old conductor plate available to pull the flow rate data out of. We have, excuse me, getting a little bit nervous here. Let me take a drink of water. But yeah, the 722-9s, which is, I'm sure a lot of people are running into that. Those are very easy. They're pretty straightforward as long as you have the correct vehicle information to start with. When it comes to Mercedes, I recommend getting access to their parts catalog, and then you can decode the VIN and make sure you have all the correct information, because there will be some funny questions in the programming software to do. But really, realistically, the most difficult, or the one we get hung up on the most, is actually Ford, believe it or not. And I know a lot of people, Ford, that I thought that was simple, but no, actually it's not. With Ford, there's a lot of tricky processes, and there's always more than one process to take on, any given flash. So it's something you have to watch out for. But yeah, Mercedes and Volvo aren't all that difficult. I mean, especially once the Volvo software is set up, it's extremely straightforward. The same thing with Mercedes.
Okay. Hans Jorgensen, if your neighbor does walk by and turn the key off, is it just a restart programming, or is the module done?
It, again, really depends on the vehicle, but in the so let's see. So good example of an extended time flash that we run into is Nissan. So if you're programming a 5-speed rear wheel drive, if it's on like a Frontier, that's going to be about an hour and a half. If it's on a Titan or an Armada, it's going to be about 3 hours. So these are the ones we run into in the wrap program where people will inadvertently turn things off. So it will, once the key gets turned off, it will appear as if that module is locked. What happens most of the time is the module is still in its programming state. So even though the power got removed, the module is still in programming mode, and it's still waiting for that next set of instructions from the programming application. So your job will be to figure out, how do I get that module out of programming mode so that I can restart? Some OEs will just automatically allow you to restart. Chrysler's really good for that. They have a built-in programming mode and they will just go right into it and you can restart. With Nissan, you have to do a global reset on the vehicle. You disconnect the battery, hook up a resistor between the cables, you gotta let it sit for a couple hours. Once that's done, you go in and it's just like programming right from the beginning with the module blank. A lot of OEs are like that. But like I said, make sure you know what you're working on because you could actually cause problems on others. If you do a global reset on a Chrysler when the key gets turned off, yeah, you're probably going to cause an issue. But with a Nissan, that's how you do it because it'll just be unresponsive. So the most important thing, so if it stops, it depends on what the programming application is doing. So if you get an error within the programming application, that error code is going to give you a little bit of info about why it errored. Usually you have to look through a log file. It can be a little bit tricky, but most of you're going to know it's because the key got turned off. You got that error, you hit OK, you restart and you see what happens. If the module is responsive, it'll let you go, or it's going to give you some kind of an error like, hey, my part number is wrong now, or something like that. You may have to go in and, tweak it a little bit, but most of the time you can just go right back in and restart. You may have to do a global reset. You may not have to, but yeah, don't think it's bricked. Don't freak out initially. You know what I mean? Most of the time, global reset will do it if it's not responsive.
Okay. Let's see here. We got a few questions. Okay, so someone asked about how about remanufactured or aftermarket programming? Can we do that?
So like a remanufactured module, I assume that's what he's talking about. That can be a tricky subject as well, because I mean, especially if you get online, you know what I mean? You do Google search for remanufactured module, you're going to see a lot of, hokey little remanners out there. If you're getting your module from a reputable source, then yeah, it's just fine. But a lot of these, overnight, if you're ordering a remanufactured module on eBay, it's probably not reman. It's probably just a clean salvage module. You know what I mean? So that's the important thing to do. So any properly reman module will appear the same as a brand new module within the programming software, and they work just fine.
Someone's asking, is there a flat rate for using your service to program, or does it depend on which module or type of vehicle? They're asking about pricing for programming with RAP.
I mean, pricing for programming for RAP. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. For the vast majority of them, it's going to be $125 for the flash. And that is per module. We will waive the per module if it's what they call a sequential flash. Like a lot of your PCMs and TCMs have to be flashed together. We don't charge double for that. But if we're doing a powertrain and you also want the airbag updated, then yeah, that's going to be two separate charges. The only exception to that is Chrysler, because Chrysler has increased their pricing for pretty much everybody across the board. So instead of the 125, it's 190 for Chrysler. But everything else is 125.
All right. Let's see. Where's the best place to find if there is a programming update available?
Oh, see, this is actually that's a good question. A lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people will, and I get this call a lot. Well, I called the dealer and the dealer told me there was an update available. The dealer doesn't know if there's an update available. Okay. I'll just throw that out there right now. They have no idea if there's an update available for that car unless they connect to that car and they know the part number. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hook up your scan tool, pull the software part number. It should be in the vehicle data section. Every scan tool should have it. And then if you go to the OEM website, there is a section for all of them where they will list the most up-to-date part numbers for any module out there, as long as you have the part number. That's the best way to do it. Or if you're not comfortable, do it. Give us a call and RAP, and we'll do it for you for a nominal fee.
All right, great. Someone's asking where they can find a list of the cars that we do for programming through RAP.
So like, if you're looking for a specific list, that really doesn't exist. There's a general capabilities list on our website for Opus IVF RAP2 capabilities. If you go in there, it's just going to give you year ranges and general capabilities on what we do. The problem is there's so many year, make, model ranges out there, especially for the domestic and Asian market, that list would just be gigantic, and it would be nearly impossible to maintain, for very specific things. The generalized list is on the website if you want to go and check it out. If not, give me a call.
Great. Let's see what else we got here. Right. I'm not sure if I asked this. We had an issue with the newer Mercedes programming, the rear SAM.
Okay, the rear SAM.
Can you program the new modules?
For the rear SAM module? Well, yeah, we should be able to. I mean, there are a couple other factors there. So through the J2534 world, Mercedes really, the only thing I can guarantee you that we can do on any given Mercedes is engine and transmission. There's a couple other variables depending on the chassis type. We have some other capabilities. The best thing to do is going to be give us a call with the information and we can figure it out from there. But in general, yes, we can do SAM modules.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Someone's asking, realistically, what capacity battery stabilizer is required when programming? Is 100 amp enough for most applications?
Yeah, 100 amp is plenty for most applications. Even a lot of your Euros are higher, and 90 amp to 100 will do just fine. If you're primarily doing agent and domestic, myself, I used a 30 amp maintainer for a number of years, and I was just fine. But I was only doing agent and domestic cars. When we eventually did get into the Euro market, I found that I had to upgrade to a 90 amp, and that worked just fine. Especially, like I said, make sure you're disconnecting your electrical loads, and 100 amp would be just fine.
Okay. Let's see here. Do RAP and DrivePro include the same coverage?
As far as programming goes, yes. The RAP program is just programming. Like I said before, if you're in the market for one of these alternatives to buying your own equipment, and if you're able to do all the diagnostics yourself, the before and the after, you just don't want to spend the money on the equipment or worry about maintaining a PC, RAP is going to be what you want. If you need more than just the programming help, DrivePro is what you want. But as far as programming goes, the same things we can program on RAP, we can program on DrivePro.
Someone is asking a little bit more information about what the DrivePro ES is.
Oh, the DrivePro ES, it's an updated version of the DrivePro. So we updated our interface inside, and most of the updates on the ES compared to the DrivePro are on the inside. We updated the hardware. It's a better tablet. It's a lot faster, that kind of thing. The interface has extra CAN channels, that thing, support for newer vehicles, that stuff.
Yeah, it's like a diagnostic support platform. You can get connected to OEM trained master technicians to help you with diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, it's one step beyond the RAP program. You know what I mean? Unless some people, like I said, some people are good with the diagnostics. They just don't want to worry about buying their own interface or maintaining their software. If they need help with diagnostics, the DrivePro is really what you want.
Yeah. Additionally, where I believe where the RAP programming where scan tool programming may fall short, our IVS 360 master technicians are able to tap into OE software on the back end of the tool.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly.
Yep.
Right. Be able to do that.
And to access additional programming capabilities as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's see what else we got here. So someone's asking about some procedural information regarding Fiat Cry Y Tech 2. Is that something that we could answer for them in this webinar? Or is that something that's very extensive?
That's a pretty extensive thing, especially when it comes to Fiat Chrysler vehicles. There's a lot of funny software stuff as far as the setup goes. That's a lengthy process. We probably should have another webinar on that, I would think.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, Frank. That's going to be its own separate webinar. Let's see what else we got here. Can you do used DME?
Use DME, that's going to be a pretty bad idea, honestly, on most BMW vehicles. Like I said, most of your BMWs are going to have some sort of a CAS security module, and plugging in a used DME is probably it's going to cause you a big headache because it's not going to work. BMW just doesn't like it. They've designed their vehicles to not accept those used modules.
Okay. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, can you restore any BMW control units that have failed due to programming, such as footwell module?
If it's now, a lot of them, yes, but not. I can't say 100% for all. Like I said, a lot of them we can go back in and restore them, but not everyone. It really depends on exactly where the flash fails. And BMW is a sore point for flash failures, especially if you're using the ISTA software and you're going through and you got to end up coding all, which can take a very long time, and you have a failure because of a voltage issue, or maybe another module chimes in on the bus and causes a failure. A lot of times, yes. Every time, no.
Okay. All right. What flash hardware do you recommend beyond the wrap if I wish to do my own programming?
If you want to do your own programming, I would recommend you get a Cardec Plus 3. That's going to be that's honestly, in my opinion, the best, even without me working here, I think it's the best pass-through out there. It's got support for the most, it's got more support for vehicle communication networks than anything else out there. You're going to need that. As far as, so you're going to need a maintainer, something like, now I'm not trying to endorse anything specifically but like an Iota DLS 90 is a very good maintainer, and it's very reasonably priced. You're also going to need, a laptop. You don't need to go nuts on a laptop. A lot of people think you really got to go and spend $1,000 on a laptop for programming, but you don't. The laptop that I used for programming was a refurbished model that I got for, $100, and it's served me pretty well. The thing to remember is double check, especially like if you buy a Cardec Plus 3, that's going to give you access to a really cool piece of software called the J2534 Toolbox. And it's got a really good information in there about how to set up all the softwares. And there are a number of OEs that actually cause software conflicts with each other. So you may actually end up needing a couple of laptops if you want to support every make and model out there. But if you're only doing Asian to domestic, you can get away with just one. You know what I mean? So Cardec Plus 3 is what I highly recommend. Iota maintainers are very good, very reasonably priced maintainers. And don't worry about spending a whole ton of money on a laptop. Especially you're going to be using it in a shop environment, you're probably going to break it. And if it's $100 laptop, it's If it's $1,000, not so much. So.
All right. We have a follow-up question to the DME question.
Yeah.
If we send the DME out to get it, I guess, virginized, then can we code and program it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have a number of customers that do that quite a bit. If it's sent out, I mean, that's basically the remanufacturer process. If they virginize it and they wipe the coating out of it, when we plug into it, we will have no idea, at least from our end, because we're not standing there with the vehicle, that this was a salvage module. That is the remanufacturing process. So those work just fine. We do those daily.
Great. Let's see here.
It's got to be more questions than that, guys. Come on, let me spread my programming knowledge with you. You can be specific if you like.
I'm looking through the chat here. I've been bouncing around. I'm trying to make sure I don't repeat any questions and I get to everyone's. Someone asks, with the FCA Gateway security module, can I add the Snap-on Pass-thru to my Auto Authority account?
Oh yeah, actually you can. That's pretty easy, because what it is with Chrysler, with the actual pass-through equipment, it's not like the micropods where you have to register the tool. The tool that gets registered is actually the PC. So it's fairly simple. Once you plug in your Pass-through Pro 4 in the YTech software, you just select it. That's it. Just make sure your Pass-through Pro 4 is installed properly. You get the drivers from the Snap-on website, and make sure it's communicating. You can use the toolbox to verify communication. But yeah, all you do is select it within the YTech application, and it's no big deal.
All right. Okay. Can we program new Land Rover KVM?
Right now through RAP, we don't have the capability for Land Rover. The DrivePro guys, they do have some capability for Land Rover. As far as that specifically, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. Land Rover is the one OE that I've never messed with. So I honestly do not know.
So someone wants to know how to get the OEM trained techs to assist them with diagnosis using the DrivePro.
Oh, that's super easy. There's a button right on the DrivePro so you're going to go in, hit the diagnostics, and then there's a button right in there for the live support. It's super easy. It's gonna, once you ID the vehicle, pull the VIN, it'll go right in. Yeah, you can pull that up there, Gina.
I'm gonna attempt to whiteboard this right here.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's the support button right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super easy.
See if I can use it better.
Button. Yeah. Once you hit that live diagnostic support button, ticket goes right in for the 360 guys. They see it, they'll give you a call. It's super easy.
That was my first time attempting the whiteboard there. Let me see if I can use a better color. There you go. Erase it. There, that button.
Yep. Yeah, it's super easy, guys.
Okay, yeah. Can you do Audi and VW programming?
Not yet. We're working on it. There's some background stuff we've been working through with Audi and VW. They got a couple little issues with their J2534 version of the software that we've been working through with Audi and VW. We do a lot of work with the OEs. We're not offering it yet, but it is definitely on the list. It's going to be coming soon.
I think we got everyone. I think that's it for questions.
All right.
Wait, I got one more.
Okay.
Is there a cost to restore the footwell module if you're able to restore it?
A prompt to restore it. It isn't like a specific restore feature. What so the OEs that do have their recovery function, it's really built into the application. It recognizes the failure and it just allows you to restart. Right, there's not like a button to hit to recover. You know what I mean? It allows you to restart.
We have a question about support techs. Is there an additional charge for the OE support techs?
That's really more of a you question, isn't it?
Yeah. So with your DrivePro, your support subscription for the DrivePro ES, you get unlimited access to them. You can call them as much as you want in a day, in a month. There is a monthly subscription that goes along with the purchase of the DrivePro ES. And that gives you access to unlimited access to your IVS 360 support technicians for diagnosis, software updates. It's your warranty for your tool, and it keeps everything up to date and gives you continued access. Does the DrivePro show if the vehicle has a programming update available?
Again, so I mean, on the tool itself, it's not going to tell you that. So like I said, you have to access the OE information in order to figure out if there's something available. So the DrivePro can tell you the current part number that's in a given module on a given vehicle, but it by itself can't just say, yes, there's an update available. You're going to have to take that part number, go to the OEM website, and then compare that to their released part numbers for that given module, or you hit the wrap button and we do it for you for a fee.
Okay. Right. If we don't have any more questions, I think we're going to wrap it up.
All right. So, I mean, just some closing thoughts for you guys since we're going to wrap it up. Remember, don't forget, programming's not magic. Think of it just as another replacement part, just another part of your diagnostic process. Don't be scared. Don't ever be scared. Double check your work if you have an issue. If you got to step back, close your eyes and pretend that car just came into your bay, don't hesitate to do that. I do it all the time. Don't be scared of it. It's not magic, just another part. Right. And thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.